Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking all the books that I read in the month of March. Now if you watched my January and February recaps, I read a shit ton of books. This month I read longer books but not quite as many, so I don't think this video is going to be as long. It's also not combining 2 months, but just giving you the lay of the land before we get started. Most of the books I read this month were also on my Kindle, so I'm not going to be holding them up or showing them. I do have a couple physical ones, but if I'm being honest, I'm trying to get used to this new camera, and the focus is very off and on, and I talk with my hands a lot, so I'm scared that if I hold up a book, it's going to unfocus on my face. So we're just gonna pop some photos up here after. So the first 2 books I'm actually going to lump together. Also, of course, there are airplanes flying right over our house right now, so that's fun. I'm lumping the first 2 books together, and those are Crescent City 2 and Crescent City 3, House of Sky and Breath, and House of Flame and Shadow. These both got 5 stars for me. They're both by Sarah J Maas, if you don't know. I'm not getting into the synopsis or the plot at all because I don't want to spoil it, and Crescent City was the missing piece for me in terms of all of Sarah J Maas's writing, all of her series. I hadn't read those until this year, and I am continuously kicking myself for not starting it sooner because, my God, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's my favorite out of all of her series. So I think for me it's above ACOTAR, it's above Throne of Glass. I just love it so much. Like, in my soul, I feel those characters. So, Hunt and Bryce are just, I love them so much. My only thing is I feel like at the end of the 3rd book, I don't know where this series is going to go, and I'm scared. Like, I feel like Sarah J Maas has been just building us up, and she's going to tear us right back down, and that's what I'm worried about. But this series, I will forever be changed since I read these books. I think that if you already like fantasy, you like romantasy specifically, these are, oh my gosh, so good. To me, it's almost like Sarah J Maas, and I don't know the exact order of how she wrote her books and when they were published and whatnot, but like, it's almost as if she took the smut from ACOTAR and the fantasy world building and all of the different dynamics and kind of the more intricate plot and put them together, if that makes sense. I just, I love them. The 3rd book that I read this month was Yellowface, and this one I picked for our book club. It was my pick, and I was going back and forth on what to pick, and I'm really glad that this was my pick. I really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars, and I just really enjoyed it. There were parts where it would get like a little dull, but there were lots of twists and turns. It's extremely thought-provoking, and it just brings up so many different points of conversation, which I think is perfect for a book club, but also just made the reading experience really interesting because as you're going through the story, you are asking yourself the questions of like, oh my God, what would I do if this were me? What would, how would my parents feel? How would that, all of that stuff. There's topics of race, there's topics of like cheating and stealing and plagiarism, there's topics of death and like what we owe the dead after they've already passed. And then it also talks about, like social media and cancel culture and the ins and out of the publishing industry. And I just thought overall this was a super interesting book. And so I guess I should have started with this, but this is essentially about a girl who, her name's Juniper, and she's an author, but her first book that she published just bombed. Like, no one cared about it. So she just feels like she doesn't really have a place, and she's a really jealous, like, hard person to be around, I think, after reading the book, that she sees all these other people having success, and she's just, like, super envious of them. So she has a friend from college. Her name's Athena, and Athena is an excellent writer. She's super popular. All of her writing is really unique. Everyone, like, praises her. She's, like, the talent of their generation. I don't know if this is going to be a spoiler or not. But essentially something happens, and I'm trying to think of how to explain this without spoiling it. Essentially something happens, as do things in all books, and Juniper does some questionable shit and then has to weave her web of lies to keep up with the shit that she's done. And she doesn't tell anyone what she did, ever. And it's just, there's so many things that she it's just snowballing, essentially. Like, she can't keep up with herself, and she's just constantly worried and paranoid and just has so much going on that she's trying to keep straight in her head, essentially. I really like the way that this is told as well, because it's almost like a journal. She's talking to you as if like, and I know this was bad, but is it really that bad? And like kind of provides commentary as she's telling you what happened. By the end, I think my consensus is that Juniper is a really mentally unstable human being. She has a lot of jealousy, she has a lot of envy, she has a lot of selfish, yes, self-absorbed almost, like she's got a lot that she needs to work through. She really has a strong victim mentality, even though she's not the victim in this story. And it's but then I catch myself and there's like, yeah, but there's that one time. And so like I said, there's so many things going on in this book, and you learn so many different things. Like, once you think you have your opinion and you're like, F this girl, she sucks, I'm done, then you learn another layer of the story and you're like, oh, well, that makes sense why she did XYZ. So, fourth book I read is Undercover Bromance by Lyssa Kay Adams. Now, this one was on my TBR, as was Yellowface, as was the Crescent City series, so I feel like I'm in good shape as far as like my TBR goes. Although I put so many books on my TBR, like I set myself up for failure. I'm not gonna be able to finish all these books. Anywho, so this one follows Mac and Liv. Liv is the sister of the main character in the first one. I can't remember her name. Thea, I think is her name actually. And then Mac is part of the Bromance Book Club. He is the only single one left. He is very like boisterous and flirty and always seems like he's got it going on, but really he just wants to settle down. And he's a restaurant owner and like a club owner. He is really big in Nashville, which is where this takes place. I hated Liv in the first book. She's the sister, so she was a secondary character, but I could not stand her. Like, she was so negative to the point where it was like, you don't enjoy anything in life. There's nothing that brings you happiness. Like, it was crazy. She had such a hard outer shell that she was unwilling to shed or unwilling to like let anyone crack. And it's almost more annoying because she's aware of the fact. She's aware that she has all these issues, but then she's like, I don't care and I'm not going to do anything to fix it, which to me is like, what are we doing here, you know? And in this book, she also annoyed me several times, but by the end, I feel like she got her shit together. She finally was like, okay, I need to face this. I need to make sure that I am setting myself up to actually be happy and I'm letting people in. The one thing with this book that I was surprised by, and I don't know if I'm disappointed or if I'm like okay with it, but the book club element took a major backseat. Like, in the first one, you're reading the passages from the book that they're reading and seeing how it applies to the story and how the main character, Gavin, how he's applying it to his life and his marriage. In this one, you don't like, they have book club meetings, but the book and what they're reading, you have like maybe 2 passages in the whole thing, and it doesn't apply to the story that much. It's almost like it was a secondary element that she was like, oh shit, I forgot I have to tie this back to a book, so she just like threw a couple of things in. And again, I don't know if I'm like disappointed by that or if I'm happy about it, because in the first book, when we were reading a book inside of a book, I was like, I don't know about this. It's too much. But now that I am expecting this to be about a book club and it wasn't, I was like, huh. I don't know. I wouldn't call this book a slow burn, but it's like a medium burn. You have some tension. You get like some build up. I think that it's a super quick and easy read. There's some smut. I'm definitely going to continue reading the series. I already have the 3rd book on my Libby, like waiting for it to pop over to my Kindle. I will say there is a sexual harassment, assault element of this story, so trigger warning for that. If you're not in a place where you feel like you can read that, I would skip this one. Overall, I gave this book 3 stars. I think I would stand by that. Honestly, I wouldn't be mad if I gave it like 2.75. It just wasn't my favorite grouping of characters. I really like Mac, but Liv is just kind of like, she gets on my nerves. The 5th book I have on my list is actually a DNF, but I'm including it because I got like 60% of the way through, and that's Don't Want You Like a Best Friend by Emma R. Albin. Now, this is like a Bridgerton, lesbian parent trap all together kind of trope. And it's not that I didn't like it. I did like it. I think it's an interesting premise. I like the Bridgerton, like, old-timey element to it. There is some smut, which I really liked, but I just didn't feel super connected to either of the characters. There's Gwen and there's Beth, and they're both trying to find husbands. Beth more so than Gwen. Gwen's already had like a season under her belt, and Beth, this is her first one, and there's a ton of pressure from her mom because if she doesn't find someone to marry, then essentially they're going to run out of money and there's nothing they can do. She can't afford to fund another season for her to go through and find a husband. And Gwen and Beth strike up a friendship, and then it obviously becomes more than a friendship, but they can't be together because of society. And there's also the element of Gwen and Beth trying to get their parents together because they are both widowed, I think. One of them's definitely widowed. I don't remember if Gwen's mom just isn't in the picture or what. And then Beth does find someone who might become her husband, I'm not totally sure, and she's just like not into it. She wants to be with Gwen, but she doesn't want to disappoint her mother, and this guy is a really nice guy. He's gonna take good care of her. I really enjoyed the Gwen and her dad storyline, that relationship. Oh my god. Spilled my energy drink. See, this is why I talk with my hands so much. Honestly, I'm surprised I didn't spill it on myself. What are you gonna do? I'm gonna leave my energy drink over there for now. So I really enjoyed Gwen and her father's relationship and that dynamic. That was probably my favorite element of the book. They just had a really playful, sweet relationship. I almost feel like, though, there were way too many things happening in this book. Like, there were way too many dynamics, way too many storylines that you were trying to connect, but it wasn't... I don't know. It was just weird because I'm saying that and I'm like, but fantasy's the same way. But with this book, it just almost felt overwhelming. And it was like, hey, can we like cut one of these? I don't really care about this one. You know what I mean? I did keep picturing the guy that's courting Beth as Colin from Bridgerton. So that's fun. I also can't wait for Bridgerton to come back. Overall, every time I sat down to read this, I was like, I don't want to. I only have like 2 hours left. So I think eventually I will finish it. But for now, I'm DNFing it. I want to read stuff that I enjoy, and this just wasn't my taste for right now. The next book I read is Pretty Boys Are Poisonous by Megan Fox. Now, this is her book of poems that she recently came out with, and I bought this immediately after listening to the Call Her Daddy episode that she did. I think that she's a really misunderstood woman, and that interview was just so interesting to me. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to read her poems. I'm not typically a poetry person, but I really enjoyed this. I'm not going to give it a rating because I don't know. The topics and everything it feels wrong. I think that she's an excellent writer, and if I'm basing my rating only on that, I would say 5 stars. Like, she is really good with words. But overall, this was just really, really fucking sad. Like, reading the things that she's been through and knowing certain poems are about her current relationship and, you know, connecting the dots from the Call Her Daddy interview and this book. It was just like, ugh, it's heartbreaking. It's so sad. I don't know. It just made me really understand her in a different way, and I think she's portrayed and talked about and assumed in a really inaccurate way, as are all women, especially in the media. But I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. It's super applicable as a woman as well. Like, you're reading this stuff and you're like, you can feel it. You're like, damn, I know how she feels in that specific instance. This book is essentially just about like toxic relationships and domestic abuse and violence and that type of stuff. So if you're not in a place to read that, I would skip this. But Megan Fox is an excellent writer, and overall this was just really insightful. And if you're a fan of Megan Fox or you're just interested in like women's stories and things like that, I would recommend this book. The last book that I have completely finished this month is Reckless by Elsie Silver. I'm so angry at myself for skipping this book when I was binging the series. Like, why the fuck did I do that? This is just perfect romance book. That's all I have to say. Winter and Theo are my new favorite romance couple of all time. The banter that these two had, Theo is just like, I am obsessed with him. I love him. I want a Theo Silva t-shirt. I want a Theo Silva tattoo. I like all the things. I love him so much. And Winter I also really, really love. I think she was the reason I didn't want to pick up this book to begin with back when I was binging the series. And it was because she was really similar to Liv, just so hard outer shell. She came across as really negative and nasty. If you don't know, Winter is Summer's sister. Summer is the female main character in the first book in this series, which I think is called Flawless or Heartless. One of the two. I get them mixed up. They're all flawless, heartless, reckless, hopeless, whatever. And then the main male character is Theo Silva, like I said, and he is a bull rider. He is mentored by Rhett, who is now Summer's husband from the first book I was just talking about. So I just I can't. I love Winter also. By the end, Winter is one of my favorite character. I can't put it into words. Winter does become one of my all-time favorite characters as well. She's super messed up from her childhood, and she's super cautious because of that. But she's not whiny or annoying about it. She's just kind of stubborn, but not in a way that gets under my skin. I don't know, that could be a personal preference, but it's she's not stubborn about working on it. She knows that these things are the next step she needs to follow. So she's begrudgingly doing it or having a hard time doing it, but she's not being annoying or refusing to do it. There is a one night stand secret element to this. I'm not going to ruin it for you because it was ruined for me, and it probably will be ruined for you if you pick up this book, because I kid you not, I turned on my Kindle, picked this up, I'm okay, I'm excited. First page, it's here's what happens in this book, essentially, in a sentence. It's secret, blah, 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 blah. I'm why would you do that? It's essentially telling you what the trope of the book is, so it's small town romance with yada, yada, yada. I don't want to know that. And there was no true third act conflict. There was conflict in this book, which I think was really needed given the storyline as a whole, to show that these characters can work through conflict and get through times where, it's not all sunshine and daisies. And there is an element I want to talk about, but I'm not going to because it will spoil the part I was talking about earlier. But it absolutely melts my heart into a million pieces in terms of Theo's involvement. That's all I'll say. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about, but it just it's so heartwarming. It's so sweet. This book, I haven't cried at a romance book in a while. I've cried at fantasy several times, but romance, typically, I can't remember the last time I cried. Maybe 7 Years Slip or Dead Romantics. This one, I was there were so many times where I was oh my god, I feel my own heart thawing pieces of it I didn't even realize were frozen. It is super smutty, cowboy romance. It's got a little bit of an edge to it though. I don't think that it's a copy paste of other Chestnut Springs, and the Chestnut Springs Ranch isn't a huge part of this, so that's why I said it kind of has an edge or a twist to it. And now I'm just so sad that I'm done with the Chestnut Springs series. What am I supposed to do with myself now? I'm sad. That is everything that I finished this month. I am in the middle of 2 other books that are on my TBR, and that is ACOTAR, the first one, and then not yours truly, Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. I'm reading both of those now. I am filming this a little early, so maybe I will finish them before the end of the month. If so, I will talk about them in April, but that's everything I've read for the month of March. I am going to talk about Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez real quick because I forgot to include it in my January and February recap. You guys, I hear everyone talking about this book online. They love it. It's so great. I hated this book. I hated it. To the point where I posted on my Instagram and was who has read this, because I need to talk about it. I gave it 2 stars. Oh, I gave Reckless 5 stars. 5 stars. This is the most infuriating book ever. The only conflict is that they don't communicate. That is the conflict. They don't talk to each other. When you're in each of the point of views, they're talking about how bad they want to be together, but there's something preventing the other one from being with them, but they don't just ask about it. They are assuming things that they overhear or that they feel, and then they're taking it as something else. I don't know. It's just both of the main characters were super annoying to me. I did like the portrayal of anxiety from the female or the male main character. That was represented in a good way, but it felt like the female main character, all of her reactions just felt really fake almost. I don't know. Or like forced and really cheesy. I wanted to DNF this at about 50%. I was enjoying it until the 50% mark, and then I was like, I hate this book. Wanted to DNF it, kept going, and then at about the 80% way, I just skimmed it and read like random shit and was like, okay, I got the gist of the story. I cannot recommend this book. I loved the first one in this series, but this one just like not it for me. That is it for the month of March. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave down below what you read in the month of March. Don't forget to subscribe, and all of my socials are linked down below, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!